Now, we're going back to Hal Moore talking here. From my command post at the Termite Hill, the enemy were clearly visible 100 yards to the south. They were damned good soldiers, used cover and concealment to perfection, and were deadly shots. Most of my dead and wounded soldiers had been shot in the head or upper body. The North Vietnamese paid particular attention to radio operators and leaders. They did not appear to have radios themselves. They controlled their men by shouts, waves, pointing, whistles, and sometimes bugle calls. It was 2:45 p.m. All three of my rifle companies were heavily engaged. We had lost the use of the larger clearing for the helicopter landings. Wounded were streaming into the command post aid station. We were in a desperate fix, and I was worried that it could become even more desperate. By now, I believed we were fighting at least 2 People's Army's battalions. Turns out it was 3. They were very determined to wipe us out, but a major difference between Lieutenant Colonel Nguyen Hu An of the People's Army of Vietnam and Lieutenant Colonel Hal Moore of the 1st Cavalry Division was that I had major fire support and he didn't. Air Force Captain Bruce Wallace and his fellow A-1E Sky Raider pilots, as well as the jet fighter bombers from all 3 services, helped provide that edge, flying 50 sorties in close air support that Sunday afternoon. Says Wallace, the importance of airplanes in a vulgar brawl is to be down among the palm trees with the troops, putting ordnance on the ground at the exact time and in the precise place that the ground command needs it. And then, so they're in these old school Sky Raiders, but then Captain Wallace is talking about what it was like watching the helicopters. Back to the book with it. It was different with a Huey. To watch 4 or 8 of them at a time maneuvering up and down and laterally and even backwards boggles the fighter pilot's mind. Those guys swarm a target like bees over honey. I had to hand it to those Huey guys. They really got down there in the trees with the troops. Then this is Hal Moore talking again. The field artillery, what we called tube artillery to distinguish howitzer folks from the helicopter rocket folks, proudly calls itself the king of battle. The brave cannon cockers and LZ Falcon went without sleep for 3 days and 3 nights to help keep us surrounded by a wall of steel. Those 2 batteries, 12 guns, fired more than 4,000 rounds of high explosive shells on the first day alone. Says Barker, on the first afternoon, both batteries fired for effect directly on target for 5 straight hours. One of Bruce Crandall's Huey Slick pilots, Captain Paul Winkle, touched down at Falcon briefly that first afternoon and was astounded by what he saw. There were stacks of shell casings at least 10 feet high and exhausted gun crews. They had fired for effect for 3 straight hours by then without even pausing to level the bubbles. 1 tube was burned out. 2 had busted hydraulics. That's some shooting. No matter how bad things got for Americans fighting for their lives on the X-ray perimeter, we could look out into the scrub brush in every direction, into that seething inferno of exploding artillery shells, 2.75-inch rockets, napalm canisters, 250 and 500-pound bombs, and 20-millimeter cannon fire, and thank God and our lucky stars that we didn't have to walk through that to get to work. Yeah. So, like I said, the close air support is absolute, or the close air support, the artillery is absolutely what, and that's been happened on many occasions for American soldiers, sailors, Marines, overseas fighting. The Air Force, the Navy pilots, the Marine Corps pilots coming in, and actually the guy on the ground controlling these guys is an Air Force pilot as well. So having that air superiority is a wonderful thing.